You know that feeling?
Yeah.
You unlock your phone, maybe turn on the TV or just scroll for a minute and bam, it hits you.
Yeah.
Just this flood. Headlines, alerts, notifications everywhere.
Yeah.
It's a lot. Like trying to drink from a fire hose, honestly.
It really is. And you shared some fascinating material with us that digs right into that feeling that, the psychological side of this constant news cycle we're all living in.
Right. There's academic stuff, mental health guides, even personal takes.
Yeah, quite a mix. And they all seem to point to this core tension
Mm.
that we feel like we need to stay informed, right? Like it's our duty or something.
Mm-hmm. Civic responsibility.
Exactly. But this endless stream of news, especially the tough stuff, the distressing news,
Mm-hmm.
it's taking a real toll on our well-being. It's measurable.
A serious toll, yeah. We're talking increased stress, anxiety. It can even lead to depression for some people.
Definitely.
So the mission for us here in this deep dive is to unpack all that, figure out how this news barrage is actually affecting us deep down, and, crucially, pull out the practical strategies offered to help us navigate it all. Stay informed, but without completely spiraling into panic or just burning out.
Okay, so let's start with that impact. What are we actually seeing? The research seems pretty consistent here. Regular exposure, especially to negative or crisis news, it wears you down psychologically.
Right.
Studies explicitly link it more time spent with distressing news,
Mm-hmm.
higher levels of stress, anxiety, even depressive symptoms. One piece mentioned research showing higher emotional distress, specifically in people who frequently consume news about crises.
And there's that term everyone uses now for that compulsive scrolling, especially when it's bad news. You just can't look away.
Doom scrolling, yes.
Yeah.
It's highlighted quite a bit. And it's not just about wasting time. It actively makes feelings of helplessness and worry worse. Think about prolonged crises, like the pandemic, or periods of intense political conflict. It becomes this loop, right? You see bad news, you feel worse, you feel compelled to scroll more, maybe hoping for answers or relief, but you just end up finding, well, more bad news, more distress.
It feeds itself. But it's not just the negativity or the sheer amount, is it? One thing that struck me was how personal it can be, how news hits differently depending on who you are.
That's a really crucial point. Your own background, your past experiences, your identity, any pre-existing mental health stuff. These aren't just side notes. They fundamentally shape how you receive and react to a news story.
So something about violence or social injustice.
Exactly. Or economic instability. Those kinds of stories can land much heavier, have a disproportionate impact on people from marginalized communities or someone with a history of trauma. A headline that one person barely registers might cause significant distress for someone else because of their lived experience.
So if you're listening and thinking, yes, it feels like too much, the signal-to-noise ratio is shot, you're not alone. That feeling is real, and it's common.
Absolutely validated by this material. And there's even this fascinating idea floated that the sense of being overwhelmed isn't always accidental. It can almost feel, well, maybe not intentionally malicious, but like a consequence of the system itself.
Or so.
Just the sheer volume, the speed, the way news is often sensationalized now, the structure of the information environment itself contributes to that feeling of being constantly bombarded, constantly underwater.
Wow. The way it's delivered adds to the stress. That's powerful.
It is. And when we look at why it's so hard for us to handle this,
Yeah.
biologically and psychologically,
Well, there's some deep-seated reasons.
right, like our basic brain wiring, we're kind of ancient hardware running modern software here.
Pretty much. Our brains evolved to scan for threats. That's survival 101. Spot the danger, react. But constant negative news and keep that threat system switched on all the time.
Like the alarm bell just never stops ringing. Exactly. It keeps our nervous system simmering in that fight or flight state.
Hmm.
And that's not just mental, it's physical.
Mm-hmm.
Increased heart rate, tense muscles, digestive problems, trouble sleeping. Your body's reacting like dangers halfway across the world are right outside your door.
And dealing with those intense reactions, that emotional regulation piece, that's something we have to learn. It's not automatic.
The sources really stress this.
Mhm.
It's largely a learned skill. We usually pick it up how to identify, understand, manage our emotions in healthy ways through relationships growing up,
Mhm.
parents, caregivers, mentors.
Mm-hmm.
If you didn't get enough of that modeling, that co-regulation, you might find yourself as an adult without some of those core skills for self-soothing or processing difficult feelings.
But you can learn it later.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
The good news is it's definitely learnable, but it takes conscious effort, intentional practice, like learning any complex new skill as an adult.
That makes so much sense. It's not just about feeling strongly, it's about having the tools to manage those feelings. And there's another big psychological factor mentioned, this intolerance of uncertainty.
Yes, this is critical. Think about why we often seek out news in the first place. We want to reduce uncertainty, right? We think knowing more will make us feel more in control.
Yeah, knowledge is power sort of thing.
But here's the paradox the sources point out. Consuming too much news, especially in a world that feels unpredictable, actually increases stress. It's strongly linked to symptoms of anxiety and other issues.
Wait, so the thing you're doing to try and feel better is actually making it worse?
Often, yes.
Ah.
It fuels a vicious cycle.
Hmm.
Worry about not knowing drives you to seek info. The info, often negative, increases distress, which fuels more worry. Round and round it goes.
Wow.
And this intolerance of uncertainty, or IU, is directly linked to higher stress, anxiety, depression. The war in Ukraine was used as a really clear example in one source. Constant media exposure amplified stress and anxiety symptoms, even for people thousands of miles away.
Because it's just constant updates, graphic images, potential escalation.
It feeds that inability to tolerate not knowing what happens next, which in turn fuels that compulsive checking, the doom scrolling we mentioned, which research links back to more distress and just ruminating on the negative.
Okay, so we're trying to cope with this uncertainty, but sometimes the ways we cope aren't actually helpful.
Right. The material talks about maladaptive responses, basically unhealthy or ineffective strategies for dealing with the distress uncertainty causes.
Like what kind of things?
One major one is developing really rigid beliefs, becoming cognitively inflexible. It's described as a kind of tightening of beliefs.
Tightening.
Yeah. When you're faced with overwhelming uncertainty and stress, the brain tries to create order, gain a sense of control. So it might latch on to very fixed ideas, very black and white narratives.
Ah, like a defense mechanism against all the confusing information.
Precisely. An attempt to impose certainty where there isn't any. But this rigidity isn't healthy in the long run. It's linked to things like increased susceptibility to conspiracy theories or engaging in behavior that's socially harmful. The mind's seeking refuge, but in an unhelpful way.
Wow. Okay. So feeling overwhelmed isn't just being sensitive. It connects to our biology, how we learn to handle emotions that struggle with uncertainty. And it can even push us towards unhelpful coping styles. Given all that complexity, how can someone start to notice if the news cycle is really impacting them this way, affecting their emotional regulation?
Well, drawing from the discussions on emotional regulation, you can ask yourself a few reflective questions, like, do you find yourself reacting really fast and intensely to news, maybe without much thought first?
Like an immediate gut punch.
Yeah. Or after reading or watching news, do you feel these big waves of emotion, sudden anger, sadness, maybe even tears that feel kind of out of nowhere or disproportionate? Do you sometimes struggle to understand why other people are reacting the way they are to current events? Or conversely, do you find yourself feeling guilty or ashamed about your own reactions or feelings related to the news? Those could be signs, indicators that the news, or maybe other triggers too, are significantly impacting your emotional state and your ability to manage it smoothly.
Those are really helpful, concrete things to look out for. So if someone's listening and, yeah, they're nodding along thinking, that sounds familiar, what do we actually do? Because like we said, ignoring it all doesn't feel right either. Staying informed matters.
Absolutely. It's not about burying your head in the sand. The consistent message is about finding a healthier balance, a more sustainable relationship with news. It's about being intentional, taking back some control over how information flows into your life.
Okay, so let's get practical. What are some of those actionable steps for more mindful engagement?
Okay, several key things come up. First, set clear boundaries. This is huge. The default mode shouldn't be constant checking. Designate specific times for news.
Not just whenever your phone buzzes.
Right. One source pointed to research showing that checking more than, say, 7 times a day or spending over 2.5 hours total on news daily, that's linked to higher anxiety and depression symptoms. So simple limits, maybe just morning and evening check-ins, or setting a timer can make a real difference.
Resisting that constant refresh urge.
Okay.
What else?
Second, curate your sources. Be picky. Choose reliable, fact-based outlets known for solid journalism. Actively avoid the clickbait, the super sensationalized stuff, or places with heavy obvious bias. And try to get diverse perspectives from reputable sources. It gives you a fuller picture, helps you avoid those echo chambers that just amplify your worries. There are even tools that can help you assess media bias.
So be intentional about where the info comes from. Makes sense.
Third, and this is a good one, seek out solutions-oriented journalism. Look for stories that don't just focus on the crisis, but also highlight what's being done about it. Stories about progress, resilience, positive change.
So finding stories about people doing things, not just problems happening.
Exactly. It
Yeah.
can balance out the negativity and foster a sense of possibility, maybe even agency, instead of just despair.
I like that. And the fourth.
Fourth, engage critically. Don't just be a passive sponge. Question the way things are framed. Focus on the facts you can verify, not just the emotional spin, which is often dialed up on purpose.
Right.
And here's an interesting tip. Try waiting maybe 48 hours before forming a strong opinion or reacting to big breaking news. Let more context emerge, more facts come out.
Yeah.
And definitely try to avoid the comment sections online. They're almost guaranteed to increase anxiety and pull you into unproductive arguments.
Okay, good advice. So that's about how we interact with the news itself. What about managing the feelings and the physical reactions when they do get triggered?
Yeah, this is crucial. Emotional and physiological regulation. First step here is recognizing your specific triggers. Pay attention. What topics, what kinds of stories really get under your skin, raise your stress, make you feel physically tense?
Knowing your personal hot buttons?
Precisely. If certain themes consistently overwhelm you, maybe you need to limit exposure to those specifically, at least for a while. Or find ways to engage with them differently, maybe from more of a distance.
And taking a break isn't failure, right? It's strategy.
Totally. The sources call it informed avoidance. Not ignorance, but a conscious choice to step back when you're overloaded. It gives you space to process without burning out. Mental health folks stress that this is sometimes essential for just functioning.
So what can you do in that moment when you feel that stress response kicking in?
Simple things can help. Engage your senses or use basic mindfulness. Deep breathing, just a few slow, deep breaths, can activate your body's calming system, the rest and digest response.
Counteracting the fight or flight.
Exactly. Or grounding techniques, focus on your feet on the floor. Notice 5 things you see, 4 things you can touch. It pulls you back to the present. And don't underestimate physical activity. Moving your body is incredibly effective for managing anxiety and boosting your mood.
Tending to the body helps the mind. What about our thoughts themselves? The worry loops.
Good question. That's where cognitive strategies come in. A big one is focusing on what you can control. So much news is about huge, complex problems far beyond our individual reach. Dwelling only there fuels helplessness.
Right.
Instead, consciously shift focus. What can you influence? Your reactions, your self-care, your immediate surroundings, maybe small actions in your community. It's not ignoring the big picture, but directing your energy where it can actually do something.
Makes sense. What else?
Another strategy is to challenge anxious thoughts. When the news triggers fear or catastrophizing, try to gently question those thoughts. Is the worst case really the only outcome? Can you look at it more balancedly? Consider other possibilities, the broader context.
But it takes practice, especially when you're feeling activated.
It definitely does. It's an active process. And beyond these individual techniques, community and support are vital.
Okay.
We'll prioritize rest and real self-care. One source called it soul care. Make time for things that actually calm your nervous system. Limit the constant input. Maybe it's prayer, meditation, nature, music, hobbies, whatever truly restores you. And basic routines, sleep. Meals provide stability when the world feels chaotic.
And talking to people.
Absolutely crucial. Connect with people you trust. Friends, family, support groups, sharing how the news makes you feel, having someone listen, sharing that emotional load. It can really lower anxiety. Much better than, say, arguing with strangers in online forums, which often just makes things worse.
Yeah, genuine connection over anonymous shouting.
Definitely. And one last thing on this news often makes us angry, right? Frustrated about injustice. Instead of letting that anger just simmer or turn into rigid negativity, the advice is to channel it into constructive action.
Wow.
That energy can be powerful. Contact representatives there, or even apps to help with that. Volunteer for a cause related to the issues you care about. Support organizations doing good work. Taking action, even small steps, combats that feeling of powerlessness.
Turning frustration into fuel. That's really important. Okay, one final area mentioned was media literacy, especially thinking about talking to kids about the news.
Yes, understanding media literacy helps you navigate and helps you guide others. It's about knowing how and why messages are made, the techniques used to grab attention or frame a story.
And what might be left out.
Exactly. News often focuses heavily on tragedy, maybe without balancing it with stories of resilience, help, or recovery, which gives an incomplete picture. And, critically, recognizing that different people see the same message through very different lenses.
So when talking to kids,
Keep it age appropriate, obviously. Be with them. Give factual info, but balance bad news with stories of helpers and survival. Ask what they've heard kids pick up distorted stuff. Validate their feelings. Reassure them about their safety as best you can, and help them find their own coping strategies.
Okay, we've covered a huge amount here, starting with that shared feeling of being overwhelmed.
Understanding the real psychological impact, things like doom scrolling, personal triggers,
Then digging into why it's so hard, biology, learned emotional skills, that intolerance of uncertainty, even maladaptive coping.
and spotting the signs in ourselves.
Right. And then shifting to all those practical strategies, mindful engagement boundaries, sources, solutions, critical thinking.
Plus the emotional and physical regulation, triggers, breaks, mindfulness, activity,
Cognitive tools like focusing on control and challenging thoughts.
and the power of self-care, real connection, channeling anger into action, and media literacy.
Yeah. The big takeaway seems to be staying informed matters, yes, but how you do it and actively protecting your mental health while doing it. That's absolutely essential. It's about finding a sustainable way to engage.
It really is. These strategies offer a toolkit for finding that balance.
So here's something to maybe mull over based on everything we've discussed. If that feeling of being overwhelmed by the news is sometimes, as was suggested, partly a consequence of the system itself, the way information flows, what might change for you in your sense of power, your perspective, if you consciously chose to slow down that intake, process things more deliberately, and shift more of your energy towards actions you can take rather than just being swept along by the constant current?
That's a powerful question to sit with, a real shift in perspective.